So it's January, and most of us are getting ready to get back into reading and want books that are big and small and delicious and make you think. So I think I have a little bit of all of those. This is a gem. This is called Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. She's an Irish writer. It came out in December, and one of the things that I think I feel strongly about that we're not doing enough of is being brave in small ways that have big consequences. And this book, which is simple as it could be, she's a spare, beautiful Irish storyteller, has exactly that as its message. I promise you that you are going to love this book, and you're going to do what I've done and I give it to everybody moving. So, Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Now, I'm in our Wesleyan store today in Middletown, and I just happened to see this on the front table. So it's like a customer, and it's called The Doctors Blackwell by Janice Nomura. And I had interviewed her last year, and now I think last year was really 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago. Anyway, it is an extraordinary story about two sisters that became the first and third of the female doctors, and they actually ended up founding a small hospital for women. But the story is about U.S. history, about European history, about what it was like. You didn't have to go to a lot of school to become a doctor in those days. Obviously, the kind of discrimination that they ran into. I loved everything about this book. As I'm sure those of you who have heard me speak before, I like nonfiction, I like biography. Janice Nomura does a brilliant job and they weren't really likable, either sister. One was a little more likable than the other. And that too is part of the story. So the Doctors Blackwell. The other nonfiction book I want to talk about, which we're out of, that I really hope you read, is called Dopesick by Beth Macy. And it's about the drug epidemic and the Sacklers and Purdue Pharmaceuticals, who knew exactly what they were doing. They were actually using algorithms and giving perks to doctors to prescribe this stuff. Anyway, it's an important story for us to understand, both as a cautionary tale and to understand people who in our lives might have become addicted to these drugs, and then how they then go on to the cheaper version of OxyContin, which is heroin, and from heroin to fentanyl. And we are now up to 100,000 deaths a year and something like 23 million people in recovery. And I urge you to read the book, but Beth Macy was also a consultant on the Hulu series Dopesick, which is with Michael Keaton and a cast that is brilliant. Some of the best TV I've seen. So I don't normally talk about TV. I want you to read, but do both, or at least do one or the other. And the last book I want to talk to you about is To Paradise. Now, this is a very fat book, and Hanya Yanagihara, I always get her name incorrect, wrote A Little Life. It also was a doorstopper. So sometimes when I start a book this size, I'm like annoyed at the writer. Like, where am I going to have? Are you really going to keep me interested for 800 pages? Well, here's the short answer. Yes. And here's why. Because she is a genius. And this book is set in the past, and it's set in the future. The Civil War ended in a different way. There's a pandemic in the future, and how that impacts our lives is brilliantly explored. She uses an interesting device with the same names and a house in Gramercy Park. But here's the thing that she does that I think makes us all read. She rearranges your brain. You start to look at the world a little bit differently. I read this book a while ago. I still am thinking about the book, and we made this our signed first edition book, and we try to pick those books that we think have the potential to be classics. And that word classic and epic is thrown around a lot. To me, a classic is a book that's going to stand the test of time. And I think that this book will stand the test of time. So it's called To Paradise, and we might have some left if you want to sign up for the signed first edition. But regardless, invest the time in the doorstop of 800 pages. It's worth it.